Hi everyone, this is Freddie with Superbike Unlimited, and we're going to bring you an update on the KTM 450 SMR Supermoto project that we're doing. As always, one of the first things that we do on these things is weight reduction. You can also see that we've ordered a kickstand that is way too long. We're going to have to hack this thing up, we think, to make it work, but we did find a kickstand that works. It's for an SX 450, as you can see. That's not going to cut the mustard, so we're going to have to whack a good 3 or 4 inches out of that just to get it to a supermoto length. But what we're doing today is we're going to do some weight reduction, and what we have here is a set of titanium sprocket studs and nuts that we actually got from Warp 9. So these are inexpensive and a pretty reasonable way to do weight reduction. We're actually going to be doing titanium bolts basically all over this thing, just like we do on super bikes. So engine, really anywhere you see a bolt on this, we're going to try to find a titanium counterpart and swap it out. And we're also going to take a look at the battery that's in this thing, see how much it weighs, and compare one of our Alliant super light batteries. So that's coming up. Okay, so most of you, we're going to assume, know the benefits of titanium, but just for those of you who may not, or may not understand why we would spend a ton of money doing a bunch of tie bolts all over this thing. The obvious benefit to tie is that it's basically as strong as steel and about half the weight. That's the general concept, is that you can replace a steel bolt with a tie bolt without sacrificing any kind of strength. They look cooler and they're going to weigh a lot less. So what we'll do now is just show you an example of, this is just one. So for this, we're going to wind up doing 6 of these. This is an original unit here. So that guy is 19 grams. Yep. And then new one is 10 grams. So we're losing 9 grams, or approximately, what is that, 55 grams by doing just these on the rear. And of course, we're going to be doing this all over the entire motorcycle, but it's a very cumulative effect. Obviously, there's people that are going to comment, well, you're not going to feel that. That's true. If you just do one thing here and there, it's not going to be something that's really tangible, but it all adds up to a lot. And that's the approach here. We do everything we can all over the motorcycle. By the time we're done, we have a really big change. All right, now what we're doing is more titanium, of course. We're going to upgrade basically every body bolt on this thing, following that theme of basically replacing all steel bolts that we can with tie units. And you can see, aside from the fact that they weigh a lot less, they just look really trick. So I think this is, in my opinion, a worthy upgrade. And especially these pre-assembled kits where you don't have to do what we normally do, where you're essentially removing a bolt, measuring it, and then just replacing it with a titanium counterpart. This is a really nice solution for that. You have something you can just buy complete and just install it on your bike. It's pretty nice. Okay, so we're working on this thing. We've done a whole lot of titanium all over the place, pinch bolts, and really everything that we currently have. And we're gonna, of course, we've been logging all the bolts that we don't have on the motorcycle that we're gonna have to replace. Some of them are pretty specific, like really long M6s. I think the longest one was like a 90. I'm not sure we're gonna be able to get those in tie, so we probably won't be able to do every bolt, but we're gonna do every one we can. The next thing that we're gonna try out is we've ordered some black bodywork. I think stuff generally tends to look cooler when it's blacked out, so we're just going to see how that looks and give her a go. And we're also going to see about removing this spark arrestor just to see if it does help anything with the stock exhaust before we put our racing exhaust on. You can't really see in there. Let me grab this flashlight. Essentially, this is welded in. You can see there and down here a little. Basically, what we're going to have to do to get that out is break those welds, and then we'll have to drive it out from the inside. So we're going to probably hit that with like a chisel or something and try to break that loose, and then we'll push the spark arrestor out from the inside. Take the silencer off and just knock it out this way. So in the meantime, you can see kind of what it looks like with some black bodywork. We're just going to see how this goes. One thing that's kind of a bummer is so far we can't find a plug and play replacement front fender, so we're probably going to have to stick with the orange one for now and sort that out. The one that comes with this body kit is, of course, for a 450 SXF, which is like twice the size of the Supermoto one. It looks kind of goofy, so we're not going to do that.
It's coming slowly but surely.
So what Tex is doing is basically grabbing a hold of the spark arrestor and essentially just peeling it off of the weld. And it looks like we've pretty well gotten it knocked loose there. So we're just gonna pry it on out of there.
I feel we should point out that we are not going to be riding this thing off-road at all.
Yeah, exactly. This is for us. Obviously, this is not a trail bike. It's never going to be. If it is on a dirt section, which would be a miracle, it would be at a supermoto track.
The top is loose.
Yep, we're broken loose. Looks real pretty in there. Just gonna pull that on out now. So this is the battery that is in the 450 SMR, and we right away noticed this is a very lightweight battery. To be OEM, this is probably the lightest OEM battery I've personally ever seen. However, it's not very powerful. It's a 24 watt hour battery, which we calculated to be 2 amp hours, which is a more conventional power output measurement of a battery. So we do have our trusty Alliant batteries. We run these on all of our super bikes. This is an Italian product and used by factory teams and excellent stuff. So we're going to just compare and see. This is a 5 amp hour battery, so it's going to be more powerful. And we're just going to see if we can save a little bit of weight here. So we'll put this on ounces. And that does have, we'll put some screws on it to make sure it's a fair comparison. So this is a 17.46 ounce battery here, the original one. And then this is our Alliant. And we come down to 14.5, but we don't have, there we go. So we'll use the screws and receptacles in there, and that bumps us up to 15 ounces, 15.06. So this is still a solid 2.5 ounce savings over the stock one, and it's a 5 amp hour battery. So really this should give us a little more margin for error in terms of cranking power and outright capacity. So this is going to be a really good upgrade. A little bit lighter and substantially more powerful, twice the amp hour rating. So we're going to pop that in now. Actually 2.5 times the amp hour rating. And of course, this was the other big consideration. We have several sizes and shapes of these. This thing is almost exactly the same size. You can see it's essentially directly interchangeable. So it's going to be a perfect fit. Okay, so here you can see that we're beginning our transformation into blacking this thing out, and we've done a lot of our titanium. We have found a few other odds and ends. We did the caliper bolts and of course all the stuff on the triple clamp and clutch master cylinder and really anything that we had. And we've got a nice list of titanium that we've ordered directly from Zeta. And something we're going to show you guys is some of these bolts came, like we ordered some kits from Warp 9. It's pretty good quality titanium, and that's what some of these are. And we have a really large stock of tie here, and we kind of filled in the blanks using our Zeta tie. That's our favorite titanium bolt. And what we've done is we basically just used a torch to achieve that similar look to them. You know, it's not exactly the same. It's kind of hard to be as consistent doing it that way, but it's pretty damn close. I think we've done a good job of emulating it at the very least. And once we get our next batch of titanium in, we'll show you some of that. And now what we're going to show you is we are preparing to install the preload adjuster on this shock that the KTM offers. Texas got the shock sitting over here with one of our workbench areas, and this is the stock WP shock, and it has this manual adjuster on it. And what we're going to do is replace this with KTM's I guess it must be hydraulic, I guess. Would you say, Tex?
It's
gotta be. Well, not hydraulic. I mean, what the hell is it? Just mechanical?
Yeah, it's just a mechanical.
Yeah,
it's just a different way of doing it that doesn't require the spanner wrenches.
Okay. Yeah, well, I guess that makes sense because there's no tubing or anything on it with that. But yeah, it's a much nicer piece. We'll show you that, and we're going to put that on. It just makes it easier to adjust it on the fly, which I think will be handy when you're out on a ride if you want to try some different things and get a different feel without having to break the tools out. It's going to replace this unit here. So we're going to have to compress this spring, remove this adjuster, and then we're going to bust on the KTM unit, which is here. Also, this is all billet, which is a pretty nice touch. I have a feeling it probably weighs a touch more than this one, but that ease of adjustment is worth that. And this is our shock stretcher. This is something we're discussing potentially upgrading this shock to an aftermarket unit that we're probably gonna have to do some modification to. So the first step is gonna be to measure accurately the length of this unit, make some notes, and once we do that, we can get the other one in and try to modify it to achieve that same length. So what we're doing right now is we are working on making our very motocross spec kickstand work for Supermoto. Of course, this thing was really long. We can show you the piece that we've cut off, but you know, it was back here. So this is quite a bit shorter, and what we've done is essentially we just sort of cut it off slightly longer than what we would need with a base, and just laid it over on its side, matched the angle to the surface it's going to be leaning against. And now what we're doing is we've just been trying to find something. We don't have a welder here, and we're trying to do as much as we can in-house. And so what we're going to do, at least temporarily, is we're going to repurpose something to basically make a puck to go here, because while this would work fine on like concrete, you know, on softer asphalt, or certainly on something soft like dirt or grass or whatever, this is probably just going to sink in, the bike's going to fall over. So what we were thinking about is Delrin, and of course we got a ton of these laying around. And what we've done is we've begun cutting up a block of knee puck. And right now this doesn't look like much because we're really just mocking it up and cutting it away. But what this is essentially going to do is it's going to form our pad. And you can kind of see the concept before it's been shaped here. This is sort of what's going to happen. It kind of keys in like that. We're going to mount it using some fasteners and some set screws. And, you know, I think this is actually going to work out really well. Obviously, right now it's really chunky and kind of wild looking, but this is nowhere near the final product. Right now, we're just kind of getting everything into place. But once Tex gets done cutting this down and shaping it, I think it's going to work really well, and it's not going to weigh very much. So excited to see how that comes together. And we'll check back in just a few minutes and see how it looks. Okay, we're about to put this back on, and you can see kind of where we're going with this. Tex has done a nice job of kind of shaping this thing and getting rid of some of the sort of chunkiness of it all. And it's really quite solid. You can see it's kind of countersunk in here. There's not really any movement in this thing. And yeah, it doesn't weigh a lot. I think this is going to work really well. So now what we're going to do is put it back on and just see how the lean is and see if we need to adjust the height. He sunk these in enough that if we need to shave a few more mils off, we've got that adjustment to do that. So now we're going to put it back on and see what it looks like. So we've completed the reshaping and reinstallation of the kickstand. So here's what you can see is kind of the final product. This is you know, as it's installed, and you can see you also do have to kind of notch this frame guard here that bolts to the lower section of the frame just to allow for fitment of this kickstand bracket. So this is what it looks like mounted up, and what we're going to do is just take a look and see how it looks on the ground. And yeah, I think that's pretty good. That's a pretty ideal lean angle, and I think this is going to work out great. We'll probably make a few more quick adjustments, but I think this is going to be good to go. Pretty happy with how that came out. Okay, so we just got a delivery of some of our favorite parts for really anything that has a hydraulic clutch, and that's going to be our Oberon slave cylinders. We always use these on practically everything nowadays because frankly, they are really high quality. They always improve clutch feel. And the most important thing is they're super durable. We've had some major issues with, especially on our Ducati. We have a V4R Superbike, for those of you who may be watching this only for Supermoto purposes, that the very first time we rode it has a Brembo slave cylinder, just like our KTM. It failed like couple laps in, so it completely ended our first test weekend on that motorcycle. And since then we've been religious about replacing those. It's so cheap. I think a slave cylinder for practically everything's about $110. They're made out of billet. They're super high quality with Viton seals and CNC machined and all that kind of good stuff. They're made in the UK. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. We have these are the ones that are specifically for KTM and Husky 450s, 250s, 530s, 300s, you name it. And we just really like these. They come with everything you need to mount them. They come with every single component, including the OEM gasket. It's all in the box. So we're going to slap that on real quick. We'll show you the bleeding process a bit, and then we're going to move on to another quick upgrade. Okay, so we've got this one on, and we'll show you over here. This is the original. So, you know, again, this thing, you might never have a problem out of it, but it's just not worth the risk of this ruining your day. I mean, if you're at the racetrack, it sucks enough. If you're in the middle of nowhere, that's a really big hassle. So for 100 and something bucks, well worth the cost of replacement. You can see here, reservoir caps popped off, bleed nipple covers popped off. So now what we're going to do is Tex is going to just bleed this. And is this, do you essentially bleed this the way you would like a brake?
Pretty much, exactly like you would a brake.
Okay.
Probably not going to get a whole lot of fluid out of it at first.
All right.
And then the reservoir is not very big at all. So,
what fluid are you using in that?
this is
660, the expensive stuff.
Well, an open bottle I had on the shelf that wasn't very old. So
Yeah, only the best.
well, if we don't use it, we have to throw it away.
Yeah, exactly. And do you pump this once it starts pulling through?
I do it with the vacuum bleeder at first until I start getting, you know, pretty solid fluid through there, kind of like how it's starting to do now.
Okay.
And then once I get a lever, I'll do it the pump and pump it and crack it
Got it.
to finish it off. Suck it down a little bit.
It does look a lot better in there. It's just a nice looking piece.
Definitely like the contrast.
Yeah, it's got a mirror finish on it too. Nice piece. Okay, so it just dawned on me that we actually have some of these banjos with bleed nipples that are aluminum and thus gonna weigh less. And we actually have them in a really nice black anodized finish. So before we actually get into bleeding this substantially, we're gonna swap that out because, I mean, it's a couple of grams, might as well get it in there. And it's a nicer looking piece. So we're just gonna go ahead and do that. Just one of those details. It's worth updating. All right, so here you can see the comparison of the two pieces, and obviously stock one's pretty ugly. And while physically smaller in some of the areas, it feels substantially heavier. So we're just going to do a quick comparison and see what we're looking at. Oh, this thing will sit still. 19 grams for the original. Nine grams, so less than half, 10-gram loss. It's not huge, but that stuff adds up on a bike like this. So we're going to go ahead and use the lighter one. All right, so now we are exactly where we were before, close to it. And Tex is, you can see this is on, looks a little bit tidier. And essentially Tex is just bleeding this the way you would expect any hydraulic system. He's essentially pumping up the lever, cracking the bleed screw, and repeating. All right, so we've got this installed, and now we're just gonna do the old zip tie style trick where you just let it sit overnight and any remaining air should float to the top. It's always nice when you have a master cylinder that has a bleed because you don't necessarily always have to do this, but this can help get that last little bit out of there if anything. It feels pretty good as is, but this is ready to go now. Looks really good. Next, what we're gonna do is we have these foot pegs from Warp 9, and I know some of you guys are probably gonna say, oh, well, you know, Warp 9, that's not a exotic or high-end brand. Yeah, that may be so, but we actually really like a lot of the stuff they make. It's very purpose designed and it's affordable. I mean, you know, frankly, a good piece of aluminum and some good studs and a slider, it's a pretty basic concept. I don't think it needs to be a very expensive and you know, specific thing. This works great, and I really like these. The only thing about these that were kind of a pain in the ass when you get them, the slider is not installed on the foot peg, and it is not easy to twist that slider onto this bracket here without it kind of beating up the peg. So you really have to have a pretty legitimate grip on this thing. And we used a strap wrench to tighten it down on there just to kind of make it to where I wasn't just hulking out on this thing with my bare hands. So now we're going to pop out the stock pegs, and the first, well, Tex has already got this one off, nice and easy. And all right, well, let's grab a new one on. Is it? I'll let you grab those. All right, so Tex has removed the frame protector just to make this a little easier to pop on there, and using a little bit of the old Motor X grease to get the install going on a little easier. Tex was just commenting that the spring is always the funnest part.
These are especially stiff too.
Take some grunt to get it in there. All right, well, that wound up being kind of like a two-man job, so sorry we didn't get any footage of that. It's just the two of us back here. What we wound up doing was using this 1/4-inch T-drive to kind of just, once we got it started, Tex was held up in place, and I just kind of used this to cram it in the rest of the way, and then this just popped right in. So we'll see if we can maybe get a shot of it in the next one, but everything's working nice and good. As you can see, it's kind of hard to avoid not getting a few scratches on there. It's just the shape of these springs. You could put some tape or something on there, but I'm not very worried about it. All right, well, today's an exciting day because we have something. We were going to wrap this Supermoto video up, but today we've gotten a delivery, and we're just going to roll all this stuff. It's probably going to be like a 30-minute video, but whatever. I think you guys don't mind. And today we're going to have a really exciting update, something that we've been interested in. We wanted to know how to make this thing faster and have more control, and of course, me being a big electronics guy, the clear answer is to put a proper ECU system on it, and I'm really happy to announce that we've gotten our solution right here. And this is going to be in the GET ECU. And we haven't actually opened this stuff up yet, so you're going to see this right as we do. But this is essentially everything we need to tune this motorcycle, and these systems come with a preloaded map for a single injector. Actually, there's two preloaded maps for single injector, so we'll test them both. And technically, if you wanted to, you can actually even add a second injector. They offer a second injector kit for this motorcycle. That's something we're thinking about trying later on, just to see what happens. But so what we have here, this indicator is essentially, this shows our launch control and our traction control levels. So this is something that we're going to try to find a nice tidy way to put this, and we'll test that out, of course. And then this is going to be our ECU system, with which we also have Wi-Fi access and control. So this is a product that we've never used. It's going to be a learning experience for us. We've used all kinds of ECUs here for super bikes and street bikes, and even some off-road stuff and supermoto stuff in the past, but never this. So this is going to be really exciting for us because it's going to be a really big learning experience. But what's great about, sorry about that, my battery died. So what I was saying is that essentially what's cool about these is they are 100% plug and play ECUs. As long as you're just going to use a single injector or whatever your bike comes with standard from the factory, then when you get one of these ECUs from us or from Athena, you can expect it to essentially just plug in and fire it right up. It's going to work. It's going to have maps that are already set up for what you're running. You know, assuming you have a reasonably standard configuration, we may be able to get you maps for other configurations, but it's just going to work. So next, what we're going to do is start taking stuff apart. We're going to put this on. We're going to mount some things, do a test fire, and do a before and after on the dyno, see what happens. Okay, so we have the original ECU here, which is oriented this way. We've popped that out, sorry, oriented that way. And we've taken that out. This is the new one. And dimensionally, they look to be basically the same size. So it should be able to use the same boot and everything. There's another shot. You can see connector wise, they're the same connector. So what we're going to do first is, this should be pre-programmed for this bike. We're literally just going to connect it and see if the bike fires up. So let's do that first. Okay, so ECU is in place. We've got the boot off for now. We're just going to make sure it works. If you want to just give that a test fire. Starts. All right, so what we'll do first is we'll hook up any ancillaries that we have, the launch control, traction control stuff, and just test it. And we're just gonna throw this thing right on the dyno and just see what happens, see if it makes any more power as is, and look at the air fuel and just see what we're working with. All right, well, since we're working on this, we decided screw it, we're gonna go ahead and wire up everything. So disregard what I said, like I guess in the video 5 seconds ago, where I said we're gonna put it straight on the dyno. Since we've got it over here, we're just gonna go ahead and wire up all the handlebar switches, and we'll show you kind of what that looks like. You know, right now this is not by any means final, but this is kind of what we got going for now. This is basically gonna show us traction control and launch control settings. This is our map switch here, and then this over here is what controls this unit. So this is just kind of what we're going to start with. We've kind of sorted out some wiring. We don't have everything we need to run both the Wi-Fi communication device that allows you to use the mobile app and tune this and make settings changes and monitor and all kinds of stuff. So for now, you have to choose between either the launch control stuff and the Wi-Fi tuning module. We don't really need launch control and traction control on the dyno, so we're going to disconnect that until we get this. It's basically like a splitter, so to speak, a Y-type cable that allows you to run both. Until we get that, we're just going to go ahead and use the Wi-Fi module. That unit is where that looks like this, and it's pretty cool. You can see that when you're looking at it, it has your Wi-Fi name and password right on it, and essentially once you power on the bike, this will light up and you can connect to it from your phone. And I'll show you, this is what the app looks like. So from here, you can, it's available for iOS and Android, so that was something I was concerned about. I just got an iPhone. And here you can basically select ignition maps and fuel maps. Once you select one, you double tap the grid, and you can make backups. I've already done that, so I'm just going to say no here. And you can just select your values and add or subtract ignition timing here. Fuel map, same deal. It's just a percentage of fuel increase. It's a pretty basic concept, as you can see. You can also adjust launch control settings. That's rev limit. Gear cut, this is for quick shifting, which is something we're going to go into later. We don't have that because unfortunately the sensors were back ordered at the US warehouse, but we have gotten that on order. So this is going to allow full throttle clutchless upshifting once we get that in. That's going to be something really cool we'll be testing. And then also you have a lot of other stuff here. I don't think we're going to be able to look at everything because we're not connected. Yeah. So from here you can see trouble codes. It has all of your CAN-based sort of OBD style diag codes. That's available here. Monitor just shows throttle position, and here you just have settings. We can't see any of that right now since we're not connected. But yeah, so first we're just gonna, I'm not gonna touch a thing. We just want to see what the installed ECU maps look like on the dyno. We'll do 1 and 2, see if there's any difference between the two of them at full throttle. And then we'll do some tuning as needed and see, for one, if this thing makes any power over an otherwise stock motorcycle. Just change the ECU, is it faster? And then 2, what do we see after we make some changes to fueling and ignition, and maybe we can find some horsepower. Okay, so that's a wrap. You've seen the dyno pulls, and now we're gonna see the results. So basically what we're gonna show you is stock, and I've did several stock pulls. I wanted to select one that has the full RPM range. The highest stock pull was in the 55s, like 55.2 or something like that. And that one is not a good reference because I started sampling at like 5,000 or 6,000 RPM, so it's kind of just like a really short one. But I want to show you guys the long, you know, good examples of apples to apples. So what we're going to do here is show you stock, get ECU stock, and then get ECU tuned. So we will start with Just gonna close this tuned file. And okay, so run file 7 here is a good example of an RPM trace that started low, you know, around 3,000 RPM, 3,400. That is a pretty good indicator of what kind of power it was making. Stock, you know, you have this pretty big hole here. Even the stock GET ECU file, we can see that up here, it's not as strong. We've lost, you know, about a horsepower. Not a big loss there, but still something you never want to see. And then down here, however, the GET ECU has picked up quite a bit of horsepower. So if we just go horsepower only, we're making 4 more horsepower down low just with just the base map. You know, that's a pretty good starting point. Then we'll just show you a full graph of tuned. And I'm just going to close this base file here. This is a tuned GET ECU file. So here we're making 8 more horsepower. And then of course we build across the entire rev range. So this is really nice. And I'll pull torque back up here as well. Let's get torque back in the picture. And you can just see we're making a substantial amount more torque. Matter of fact, we'll just get horsepower out of here so you can see. This is really going to make a difference coming off the corner. You know, you're making 8 more pound-feet of torque here at 5,000 RPM. This is a great example of how this is going to give this thing a lot more of a linear and powerful torque delivery. So overall, I definitely think this is a worthwhile modification. I did just a pretty basic tune on this. I did change timing quite a bit from what was in this file base and added a substantial amount of fuel. It was pretty lean. We'll pull back up the that one file, I think it was run file 23, and we'll go to a double graph. We didn't have AFR with the stock ECU because we had that spark arrestor in there. We've taken that out, of course. So let's see, we have, oh, that's after I tuned it. Close selected. Let's try this one. Okay, here you can see the AFR down here, pretty lean. You know, this is where we made some power for sure. It's just by correcting this. And then my file is the blue one. You know, we're pretty close to 13 across the board. You saw the grid. We don't have super high definition control over the tuning on this. It's kind of large blocks of RPM and throttle. That's fine. It's obviously good enough. And I changed the whole thing. I made changes across the whole board. And if you buy one of these and you happen to have a 450 SMR or a 450 SXF, I'll be happy to hook you up with one of these files if you order the ECU from us. But yeah, I think this is pretty worthwhile. So we're just gonna close that one again. And yeah, our tuned file over a stock calibration, we picked up about 2 torque and about a horsepower and a substantial amount of mid-range. So yeah, I'm really happy with that. I think that's going to be a really good stopping point. The next video that we do, we're going to do some really trick chassis stuff. We definitely have some suspension things in on board that are going to be I feel a big step on this bike. The weight is going to be something that'll be interesting to compare. Obviously, we have an air fork on there now, so we're going to weigh everything, see how much the stock stuff weighs, see how much the new stuff that we're going to be running weighs, and we'll compare. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for this one. Thanks again for watching. If there's anything you'd like us to cover in the next one, leave a comment below. Make sure you like this video and subscribe. We'll see you the next time.